Hello and welcome to the Capa podcast. My name's Matt. I'm the senior practitioner for Capa First Response, and I'm joined today, as ever, by our founder and CEO, Jane Griffiths. Hi, Jane. How you doing?
Hey, Matt. How you doing? So lovely to be here with you.
With me.
Face to face.
I know.
In your lovely flat. Sunny.
It's a rare treat, isn't it?
Fantastic. You know what? It is a rare treat.
Yeah.
I think it's so lovely to be together to record this.
Yeah, I agree. It already feels a lot more real.
Yeah.
Better. Yeah. So this series is going to be slightly different to what we've done previously, isn't it? Do you want to say a little bit about why we're doing this series to begin with?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess our previous series that we've thought about, we've sort of been in conversation with, or we've been Zooming and speaking to particular people about particular issues. This one is really designed for families who feel a bit more isolated, whether that be via location or through circumstances and their experience, feel like they're unable to talk to people. And we wanted to provide something that families could access 24/7, regardless of their locations. I also think it's really important to say that East Sussex Local Authority sort of really commissioned us to do this because they really wanted to support families living in those rural outlying areas who found it really, really difficult to get support. And we'll be offering I guess if we were to sit, Matt, and think about what would be our top 5 or 6 strategies, we're sort of aiming to sort of think about those strategies for families, aren't we? That's what the series is going to be about. Yeah,
so it's a little bit more. It's going to be a little bit. I mean, I think hopefully all of our podcasts have been useful, but this is something a bit more tangible, a bit more solid that people can use and put into practice.
Yeah, we're not thinking about, these episodes aren't for about us understanding what this issue is. This is really, let's go, what's the support that we offer to families? And let's share that. Yeah.
I think you said a minute ago that these are like probably 5 or 6 of our top strategies that we know are useful to quite a few different families that we work with. But it's always really important to say that nothing works all of the time. And there isn't one thing that is going to work for every single family. And even if it works for that family, it doesn't mean that it's going to work 100% of the time. So it's just important that we say that at the top, I think, to say these are all ideas that, have a listen, keep it in mind. Hopefully you think, I'm going to give that a try. But even if you think, it's not going to work for me, that doesn't feel quite right, hopefully you'll still think about the idea behind it. And even if you don't action anything from it, you can think about why it might be useful and why it might be important. And hopefully there's some use in that as well.
Yeah, and I think, a reminder that all of our work and all of our support to families is tailored and bespoke. We speak to families and think, what's happening for them in their home? And we can, it could be that we don't talk about any of these strategies, but generally what we've found out is these strategies come into our support at some point for families. And there will be somebody out there listening to this and maybe think, I can't get on board with what Matt, I can't get on board with what that strategy that you've spoken about, but I can really get on board with this other strategy. And we anticipate that and expect that. I think what's important as well is that, everything we're going to be sharing in this series, it's not going to do any harm. It's all relationship building. And that's only a positive thing. You may see things, and we'll talk about that in one of the episodes that we're going to be presenting about, what can happen if actually things do feel different. My child has noticed something's different. What do I do then? So, and we'll sort of address that, won't we? I think it's episode 2 when we're thinking about our safety planning.
Okay. So that's a little bit about why we're doing it. And some of the things we're going to be covering, but it's going to look a little bit different from our other podcasts, right?
Yep. Yeah. So, up until now, it's been us chatting, hasn't it? And having conversations. What we've decided to do with this, which will look a little bit different, is at the beginning of every episode, we'll have a little explanation around what we're doing. This isn't about explaining why this happens, because we've done that. This is about sharing those strategies, how we would share them with a family. So we're doing it separately. So I'm going to be presenting 3 of them and thinking about 3 strategies, and you're going to be presenting 3 of them and support 3 strategies.
Yeah.
But we're doing them solo, so they won't have that opportunity of a back and forth. And I think that's going to be the main difference that people will see.
Yeah, and I think that's hopefully will make it a little bit more useful, because you can follow along. You're not listening to a conversation, like you're saying, of us back and forth. You're listening to us giving you a strategy as we would, in a session. Yeah. If, as we were explaining it to you and kind of telling you why we're suggesting you do this, what the background is to it. Is there anything else we've missed, Jane?
I don't think we have. Hopefully we can just, let's do it. Let's give it a go.
All right, let's get into
it.
Okay, so for the first one, we something called 3 Faces, and it's all about really understanding what happens when we become dysregulated. Now, a lot of it is aimed at thinking about what happens when your child becomes dysregulated, but it relates to all of us. It's about being human, essentially. It becomes more relevant when you've got someone who is really struggling to regulate their emotions. But I think it's valid for everyone to think about.
Well, I think it's probably fair to say as well, as we co-regulate as well, don't we? So if somebody is starting to dysregulate, it's really normal for us to start dysregulating too. So
of course,
it's really helpful regardless of scenarios, but particularly when your child is dysregulating.
Yeah.
What's going on for you? And
as we know, if your child is dysregulating, or if one person's become dysregulated, then if that then triggers the other person, they become dysregulated, and you have 2 people dysregulated, that's going to lead to escalation.
Yeah.
So the idea being, the more you understand about what's actually going on, what you can do about it, what's kind of going on in the brain at this moment, you've got a better chance of being able to stay a little bit calmer yourself and respond in a more helpful way.
Brilliant. Okay, well, over to you, Matt.
Okay, so this is the 3 Faces, and I first came across this in my work with Dr. Annie Clements when we were doing some work around neurodiversity. But I think it relates to everyone as well, and it's useful for all of us to think about what's kind of going on when we become dysregulated. It's quite, it can be quite simple, and that's for a reason, because when things are difficult, when we're in a heightened situation, when there's an escalation happening, we don't want to have to think about really complicated, complicated theories or abstract ideas so much, So we kind of use some visuals with this as well, to help it, I guess, make a bit more sense, really. So yeah, like I say, it's a really quick and easy way to visualize where you're at, where your child or your children are at emotionally, and the most helpful way to respond, so you can de-escalate a situation, because that's always our first priority, is to de-escalate. De-escalation is the best way of keeping everyone safe. So, like I said, in the moment, we want to keep things as simple and as straightforward as possible. So, with that in mind, I'd like you to draw. If you can follow along with this, or you can just look. But if you're following along, I'd like to draw 3 like emoji faces on a page. First one's going to be a smiley face or a happy face. Second one would be like a sad or a kind of grumpy looking face. And then the third one is sort of a flat or a neutral looking face, just with a line straight through the middle. Oh, yeah, for the mouth, that is. So for the first one, I'd like you to draw a dotted line straight through the middle of that face. So it divides the top and the bottom half. So that's for the smiley face. For the second one, I'd like you to draw a line directly above the face, and then the third one, a line directly below the face. So you should have 3 faces: smiley face, sad face, neutral, flat looking face. First one, a line through the middle. Second one, a line above. Third one, a line below. So these 3 faces indicate our 3 main emotional states that we're going to be talking about. First one is when we're feeling more balanced or calm, a bit more like ourselves. Second one is when we are dysregulated. or, maybe when someone's having a meltdown. And the third one is when we're masking. And we think about masking in terms of neurodivergent people a lot. But in a way, we can, we all do it to some degree. If we can think of it in terms of putting a brave face on a situation, which is something probably most parents who are listening to this will have experienced quite a lot. Someone goes, "Oh, how you doing?" You go, "Yeah, I'm all right." But really, you're having a really, really tough time. But you can't let that person know that, because you're worried that you'll be rejected if you respond, how you're actually feeling. So that's kind of what we're thinking about in terms of phase number 3. Okay, so let's look at that line across all 3 of them. The first one, the line's in the middle. Now, this is quite a simplistic way of looking at it, but like I say, hopefully that makes it a bit more useful to you in the moment. Anything above that line is the thinking part of the brain. Okay. Anything below that line is the feeling part of the brain. So the thinking part of the brain is, as it suggests, the part of our brain that is responsible for our thoughts, who we think of in terms of, what we think of in terms of who we are. Maybe our thoughts for the future, our hopes for the future, our memories of the past, our things we like, things we don't like, our passions, things that, ways we show our creativity, all that kind of stuff. That's more coming from our thinking part of the brain. And the feeling part of the brain is more, as the name suggests, how we feel. So that can be emotionally, or in terms of our sensory input. I'm feeling hot, or this jumper's itchy, or, our senses. So those kind of feelings. So light, sound, like I say, temperature, touch, all that kind of stuff. So when those parts of the brain are in balance, we're feeling okay. So that's phase number 1. That's where we're at. Essentially, we know how we're feeling emotionally. We know how we're feeling physically. And then we've got a good balance. So we've got all that kind of raw information coming from our feeling part of the brain. And then the thinking brain is online, so it can process all of that information. So we understand, okay, I'm feeling really hot, I can take off a jumper, or I'm feeling really worried because, that friend said that thing to me, I'm not sure what I should do about it, or whatever it might be. We've got input from the feeling part of the brain, and then the thinking part of the brain makes sense of it, stops us becoming overwhelmed. Now, if you look at the phase number 2, that line starts creeping up. Now, if we start coming more from that feeling part of the brain, we have more input from that side, it will push that line higher. So, and that can be due to, emotions. So if we're dealing with a lot of difficult emotions or really powerful emotions, that can lead to dysregulation. We can find it hard to regulate our emotions. So it can be if we're, dealing with a lot of anxiety or a lot of stress, or, even sometimes excitement, that's going to push that line higher. Now, if that line goes higher, that means we're responding much more from the feeling part of the brain, but that also means we've got less thinking brain online. So our ability to think rationally, use that thinking part of the brain, is reduced. We can't have all thinking and all feeling at the same time. It has to be in balance. So more of the feeling means less of the thinking, which means as we become dysregulated, and as that line gets higher and higher, we become more and more dysregulated. We're going to see more irrational behaviours, start unable to make good choices, because we're running from that thinking part of the brain, which isn't responsible for making good choices. It isn't responsible for making rational choices. It just knows how it feels in this moment. It's not thinking about the consequences to this action or how we got here in the first place. It just knows, right now I feel really angry, or right now I feel really upset. And that's its job, basically. Now, if it gets right to the top, that's when we have, become completely dysregulated, full meltdown. At that stage, there's not much we can do except kind of wait it out, help that person to be as safe, help ourselves to be as safe as possible, until it kind of comes down again. But the key is noticing the signs as that line starts to rise. So that's phase number 2. That's when we're dysregulated. And then phase number 3 is, like I say, masking. So the idea of showing the outside world what we think the outside world needs to see in order for us to be accepted. So a lot of neurodivergent people will experience this a lot of the time, or do this a lot, because their experience is, if they are authentically themselves, if they respond how they're actually feeling, they will not be accepted. They'll be rejected. And that's not safe. So they learn to mask. And like I said earlier on, it may be that, again, you're having an awful time with your child and someone goes, "How are you doing?" And you go, "Yeah, I'm all right. Yeah, getting through." When really, it's all kind of falling apart a bit. And if you've experienced that, you'll probably know just how draining and how tiring that is. And so what's going on when we're at that phase number 3 is you'll see the line is directly at the bottom. That means we are suppressing how we're truly feeling. And we're trying to think our way out of it almost. So we use an awful lot of thinking brain power when we're at that phase number 3. So instead of just feeling how we feel and responding authentically, we suppress that. And then we think, well, no, how should I be feeling? Okay, if I was feeling that way, how would I then respond? Okay, so I'll respond in that way. So it's quite a complicated mental task just to kind of be living, just getting by. And for lots of children, this is what happens when they're at school. They spend a whole day masking a lot, especially for neurodivergent people, or those, who've experienced trauma. This can happen a lot. But like I said, we may all recognize it. So those are our 3 phases, Phase number 1, balanced. Phase number 2, dysregulated. Phase number 3, masking. Now, if we spend a lot of time at phase number 3, what will happen is, well, we can lose touch with ourselves, who we really are, which can be really disorientating, really upsetting, lead to anxiety and depression, lots of different mental health difficulties. But also what happens, we spend too much time at that phase number 3, we are burning through those thinking brain resources. And when they're gone, the feeling brain takes over. So what we see a lot of in the families we work with, and this is for both parents and children, is that they're in this kind of really vicious cycle of jumping from being at phase number 3, suppressing how they're really feeling until they can't do it anymore, and then they shoot up to phase number 2. There's a big outburst, or there's a big meltdown, and then there may be feelings of guilt or shame, which are really difficult emotions to carry, which then pushes their line higher again. When we've calmed down again, because of those feelings of guilt or shame or other difficult emotions that you're carrying, or maybe other sensory difficulties, that starts pushing that line higher again. It means we're starting to get closer to dysregulation again. But then we try and suppress it. We try and mask. We try and think our way out of it. Hold that in until we can't anymore. We burn through those thinking brain resources, and it happens again. So we get into this cycle, like I say, of dysregulation and masking, and jumping between the 2 phases, 2 and 3. But then we never actually get to phase number 1, or very rarely. So, we're going to talk a little bit more about a good way of helping your child to get to phase number 1 a little bit more regularly. But I think that the key thing for this is that being able to recognize, or being able to visualize, well, where is this line for my child? Where is this line for myself? Is really useful, because if you can go, right, the line is rising, I see that line rising, and you'll see that because you start seeing more irrational behavior from your child. They may become more irritable. They will show you they're not regulating their emotions. They're not happy. They're not able to control themselves. That's a surefire sign that line is rising up. Now, it's really important that if we recognize that line's rising up, that we respond in a useful way to try and de-escalate. So thinking about those thinking brain resources, one of the thinking brain's jobs is to regulate the emotions, try and make sense of what's going on from this feeling part of the brain. Now, what we don't want to do is, if that line is starting to rise, is take away those thinking brain resources by engaging that thinking brain with lots of conversation, asking questions, really engaging in conversation that can be quite demanding to process. First of all, processing language, we're taking that thinking brain energy away. Then we're trying to interpret, what's being said, try and interpret any other meaning into it, thinking about how we feel about that, thinking about how we want to respond. This is all taking energy away from that thinking brain's job of just regulating emotion again. So, what we need to try and do is not reason with an emotional brain. Don't try and make that part of the brain do something it isn't designed to do. So if you see that line is rising, if you can see someone becoming dysregulated, give that a thinking brain space. Because once that line has come down, once we have once we've been able to de-escalate, help that person from a place of dysregulation back to a place where they're able to manage what's going on for themselves emotionally, then we can talk. Then we've got a thinking brain online that we can have a conversation with. But before that, what we're going to do is likely, push that person into further dysregulation, lead to further escalation of the conflict. So, that is essentially the three faces. I guess that the key points, again, are really keeping an awareness of where you are. Where is your line? If you know you can feel yourself, your line is going up here, you know that your thinking brain isn't working at optimum levels. So what can you do to step away, to regulate yourself so you can come back and make maybe a more useful decision about the way you respond? And if you can see that your child, that line is rising up for your child, what can you do to give their thinking brain more space, and not escalate the situation further? So that is the three faces. I hope that's been useful. Like I said, we're gonna come back to thinking about some things you can do that are gonna help to bring that line down, and help your child get to face number 1 a bit more of the time. Because it's really important to think about the fact that at face number 3, we're not able to make any sense of how we're feeling, really, because we're suppressing it. We can't really get close to how we're actually feeling. We're pushing it down, trying to think our way out of how we're feeling, which doesn't work. At face number 2, we're just completely ruled by how we're feeling. We're not thinking about it. We're just feeling it. The feeling part of the brain doesn't do thinking. It just does feeling, right? So we're not able to make any sense of how we're actually feeling. So that means that if we spend all our time at face number 3 and face number 2, we're never actually able to process, make sense of how we're feeling, move on from it. So that's why it's really important that we do help ourselves and our children to get to face number 1, so we can start to process it, so we can start to let some things go, and we can start to make sense of what's going on for ourselves. So that's face number 3. Sorry, face number 3. That's the 3 faces. I hope it's useful for you. If you have any questions, feel free to get in contact with us. Send us an email. Look on the website. Maybe some more information there that may be useful for you. You can look into Dr. Annie Clements's work as well. As I said, that's this is where I first came across it. And yeah, hopefully that's useful, and we'll talk to you next time.